crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Got an interesting topic of conversation that is timely, we believe informative and educational for you. Appreciate you being with us and trust that the next half hour is going to be of value to you. A little bit of the ground rules just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. If you would like to join our conversation, we would love for you to do so. The show's always better the more you are involved, so you'll see ways at the bottom of your screen that you can be involved in this conversation. Want to welcome in the fellow who's leading this conversation for us tonight, the one and only Josh Wright, managing partner of Hollis Wright. Good to see you, sir.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I wanted to bring you in because before we jump in, I want to talk about the attorneys who are standing by from Hollis Wright. Those are our attorneys, even as we speak. If a question pops into a viewer's mind and they want some free, all fair, confidential legal advice, the opportunity to get it tonight.
Well, that's exactly right. You know, people can call, text, email. We have lawyers standing by to answer legal-related questions. It doesn't necessarily have to be about tonight's topic, which is alcohol-related accidents and injuries and dram shop. It can be about anything that someone may have going on in their life. We've been doing this for over 10 years now, and our focus and goal from the start is the same focus and goal today, which is, David, to be able to answer questions for viewers, real-world issues that impact them and face them. Mm-hmm. And even if our law firm may not have a perfect skill set to be able to answer someone's question because it's a unique legal issue that we don't cover, we can get them to someone for free to be able to answer some legal questions.
So take advantage of that opportunity all throughout the show. As long as we're on air, those attorneys are going to be standing by. You touched on a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight, dram shop cases, DUI kind of related matters is the specific topic of conversation. Hollis Wright does a number of things incredibly well. Okay, you guys and y'all have been at it a good long while, so you have a breadth of experience. But would you say tonight's topic and these kind of cases really is something that you feel kind of is in the wheelhouse of the firm in terms of how long you all have been kind of involved in these kind of cases?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Many lawyers, very similar to physicians and some other professional organizations, have specialties. One of the specialties that I have, among a couple things, is I do a lot of alcohol-related accidents, a lot of bar, restaurant, convenience store, hotel-related alcohol cases. Right. I've been doing this for a very long time. I lecture on the topic, I have made presentations on the topic, and I lobby to the legislature as well as the ABC board about increasing certain insurance limits, about making sure that certain regulations are adjusted that need to be adjusted to help consumers in today's world. And so I've been doing it just for a long time. So I guess I would consider this kind of a specialty for my practice. It may not be a specialty for everybody at our law firm, but when these cases come in, David, they normally come to me to evaluate them, and then I may get someone else involved to help.
Yeah. Before we get into, we've got several questions and going to get through those and answer a lot of questions I think our viewers are going to have. How has you look like a young fella, but you have been at this a little while, and so I'm curious how dram shop and this particular line of cases has changed in the 15 years-ish that you've been doing this. What is different now than when you first started?
Well, I definitely think that with the onset of, started with taxis and Uber and Lyft, I do think alcohol-related injuries generally are down from where they were 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really good thing. Right. But there are still plenty of cases out there that we get access to and get a look at. I think bars and restaurants and convenience stores, because of dram shop liability over the last decade, are doing a much better job today. Doesn't mean everyone's doing a great job, but they're doing a much better job of following the rules that are established and the regulations established by the ABC board to ensure and maintain that if someone is intoxicated or in the totality of the circumstance appears visibly intoxicated, they're not serving them alcohol. They're cutting them off. They're getting them a lift, getting them an Uber, getting them a taxi, those types of things. I think bars and restaurants are doing a much better job today than they have in the past. You know, one of the interesting things that's kind of, this has become full circle is, I actually have been retained by various organizations out there to come and speak to people that are serving alcohol on the issue of, hey, what can I do to be bigger, better, stronger, and faster in this area to make sure that we're not serving somebody visibly intoxicated? How do we follow these regulations? How can we be better as an organization? And so it's kind of come full circle, but in some ways I think it's a good thing.
What is the law in the state of Alabama to selling, providing alcohol to customers?
Generally, there are two separate types of law that are established by the legislature. There's something called the Dram Shop Act, which is, let's take an example, if someone gets intoxicated, leaves a bar and they injure someone, the Dram Shop Act will protect the person injured if they were injured in property, injured by means of support of the individual that was hurt or the victim, and if they were injured in person. There's also a second component to this, which is you can't serve minors, people that are under the legal drinking age in Alabama of 21, and if you do, you are going to be punitively held accountable under the Civil Damages Act. And we can kind of unwrap both of those, but the Civil Damages Act is a claim on behalf of the injured victim for serving alcohol to a minor. And it's complicated. There are some defenses in those cases, but for the most part, those are the two types of claims.
So there is a law in place that protects an innocent driver if they're hit by a drunk driver.
Absolutely. And, you know, if that innocent driver is injured by property, meaning they have property damage, they're covered. If they are injured in person, or if they're unfortunately, you know, catastrophically injured or killed, their family has a cause of action for those claims. And if that person, let's say they were a worker in their household and they were injured at no fault of their own from a drunk driver, the support that they provide to their family can also be a form of compensation that injured victim would have and that family would have.
So all can factor in. Before we take a break, I want to get to, we have several really good questions. The question here, if the drunk driver who caused my accident was a teenager, can I still file a claim?
Absolutely. You know, that kind of goes into this concept of the Civil Damages Act. And let me just unwrap that quickly before we go to break.
Okay.
So the Civil Damages Act is the legislature established some rules many, many years ago and said, hey, look, if you serve someone that is under the legal drinking age alcohol and they cause an injury, you are, if you will, strictly liable. There are very few defenses to the case. And the only damages in those claims generally are punitive damages. So someone who is injured has the ability to bring suit against the establishment that served alcohol to that minor. The parent of the minor who's injured also has a punitive claim against the bar and establishment. But in short, if you are injured by a minor, you have the ability to bring suit for those claims, and the bar or establishment is generally going to be strictly liable for that conduct in serving alcohol to a minor. There are a couple exceptions. We can talk about them after the break, about how the bar may not have been on notice that the person was a minor, and we'll talk about that when we get back.
All right, let's step aside right here. Our first break of the evening. Perfect time to remind you that Hollis Wright is all over social media. So wherever you are, they are. Look for Hollis Wright. Just search that term. You'll find him on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Lord, Hollis Wright is everywhere. Trust me, just search for him. You'll see it for yourself. Stay tuned. We're coming back more of the attorneys after this quick break.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with The Attorneys.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. Appreciate you being with us tonight. Here with Josh Wright, managing partner of Hollis Wright. When we took the break, you were talking about the complexities whenever a minor is involved in a case, in a dram shop case. Just kind of pick up right there, pick up right where you left off on.
Yeah, so, there are some exceptions where a bar, a convenience store, a restaurant, even a country club, would not be responsible for serving alcohol to a minor. One of which is if a valid ID is shown. In today's world, fake IDs have gotten a lot better than they used to be, right? And there are defenses that those establishments will have to the extent that the clerk or the individual that provided the alcohol reasonably believed that that person was of age, right, based on a, quote, valid ID. Now, there are some, that's a factual issue that's flushed out in a lot of these cases as to whether or not it was reasonable for someone to think that. Were there relationships that they had with that person? Did they know or should they have known that the person was underage even though they got a valid, quote, ID or a fake ID? So there are definitely some defenses, and those cases are generally, or those issues are generally flushed out in litigation.
What is the bar, no pun intended, for proving that someone is intoxicated? So what's the measure or the marker for that?
So this is the highly litigated issue in all of these cases. The general premise is that you have to show someone is visibly intoxicated by the totality of the circumstances, okay? That's a legal buzz phrase. Let me break that down for you. There are a couple ways that one would show that somebody was visibly intoxicated. One is through witnesses that can identify that person was slurring their speech, they were unsteady, they were irrational, they had aggressive actions in the bar. Because consider this, not everything in the dram shop world relates to someone driving a vehicle and causing an injury. It could be a bar fight. It could be injured with a minor walking home and falling and doing significant damage to themselves, because of intoxication. There are a lot of ways that you can bring these claims. But the short of it is, using witness testimony is one important critical component in a case. And generally there are going to be witnesses when alcohol is involved. Number two is forensics. A lot of times individuals, let's take a DUI accident for example, individuals are blood tested and or they use some type of breath testing that gives some forensic evidence to establish, David, whether or not someone meets certain thresholds. The general rule in Alabama is if you are 0.14 or above, the law proscribes, at least lawyers and experts have argued, some level of visible intoxication. And that's based on, that's a complicated statement because it can be unwrapped. We could do a whole show on it. There are really well-established experts in the area that would tell you at 0.14 and above, you can't hide the signs of visible intoxication. It's based on a lot of research and data, and we won't go into all that. So forensics is another way. Another way is to show habit of the facility in the bar. Does the bar have the police called every single weekend? Are there people consistently throwing up outside, over-serving someone? That is one way that you can show through the totality of the circumstances that the person was intoxicated. Generally, it's not just one of those things. It's generally going to be a whole host of evidence that you present, and then the jury gets to decide, or the judge gets to decide, whether or not within the totality of the circumstances that person showed intoxication. As you could imagine, it's not as simple as just saying, here's the evidence, this person was visibly intoxicated. You've got to marshal together as a lawyer a series of things that happened that night and a chronology and a history, which is super important in order to establish whether or not the person was visibly intoxicated.
And I would bet, because a lot of the cases we talk about on this show have some complexities that from a layman like myself, I'm like, where do you even start? But having done this as long as you have, you kind of know where to look.
Yeah. There's no question. Chronology is everything. And I've always been a big believer in he who understands the facts the best in his lawsuit will ultimately control the direction of the lawsuit. The same thing is true in dram shop litigation, and that is, I start with a chronology. We want to know, what did that person do from the time that they woke up until the time of the accident, and then thereafter, what did they do, whether they were at the police station, whatever it is. And so, the net is you really want to control the facts, and the facts start with a chronology, and then you want to also learn information about what's that person's habit and history for this type of conduct. Have they been engaged in this type of conduct in the past? All of those things can be used to marshal the facts together to establish whether somebody, under the totality of the circumstances, was intoxicated.
There is a lot of these cases, especially with celebrities or sports figures, kind of make headlines, so they're kind of constantly in the headlines. One that's in the headlines now, the individual who was clearly intoxicated is suing or blaming the bar for making him intoxicated. How rare is that defense, that someone who is in trouble for DUI sues the person who served them the alcohol?
Yeah, so that is that's generally kind of a knee-jerk reaction of it's not my fault, it's their fault.
Right.
The law specifically states that the intoxicated individual does not have a cause of action for their own intoxication. And so someone who gets intoxicated and goes and causes an injury, they do not have a cause of action if they were injured in that accident. It happens a lot. I mean, you could imagine intoxicated people, let's just take a car accident, they're catastrophically injured at times.
Right, yeah.
They do not have a cause of action for that specific injury. Now, it's a little complicated. It is conceivable that their spouse and any minors they have could have a cause of action for support of that individual if they were served beyond the point of visible intoxication. And I know we're getting ready to go to break. One of the things I want to talk about is just some things that have happened in the headlines and some really bad events that have happened, and kind of unwrapping how those cases will be managed and handled from a criminal perspective and also a civil perspective.
All right, we'll step aside right here. Our final break of the evening. So one more segment to go. Would love to hear from you. The ways you can contact the show right there at the bottom of your screen. Stay tuned. The final segment of The Attorney is coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright.
As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13.
Welcome back. Final segment of The Attorneys. If you want to take advantage of the opportunity to speak with attorneys from Hollis Wright, take advantage of that opportunity. Just a few more minutes remaining. When we went to break, Josh, talking about the high-profile cases. Folks are always in the news, and they kind of play out before our eyes. Several in the news now. What are kind of some things that about those cases that we can learn from, or you guys even can learn from?
Yeah, it's super unfortunate when some of our athletes and actors are involved in catastrophic accidents. It highlights kind of an important component that lawyers look at, which is sometimes the conduct of the intoxicated really seals their fate. Right. Going 120, 130 miles an hour in a vehicle is a good example of the conduct of the defendant. And that conduct is going to be indicative of someone that's intoxicated, and it enhances the punishment criminally. It enhances the civil options that one has to be successful in a case, and it just kind of creates unfortunately kind of a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And so, there are a lot of high-profile stuff, but one other way that you can prove visible intoxication is, of course, the conduct of the individual. And it may not just be driving 130 miles an hour. It may be being boisterous, causing a fight at a social gathering, pulling a gun out. Those types of things are all indicative of someone that has had too much to drink.
If one of our viewers is having a party at their house where alcohol is involved and folks are drinking, how liable are they for maybe anyone at the party being intoxicated?
So that's a great question, and a question that I get a lot. The general rule in Alabama is if you are a social host at a home and alcohol is being provided at that gathering, whether people bring their own or whether it's being provided, you're not responsible and liable for the conduct of individuals at that home that may leave the scene and cause an injury, get in a fight, etc. There are some exceptions, though. One of the exceptions is minors. If you provide or serve alcohol at an event to a minor and that minor causes injury, you 100% are on the hook. So the general rule of thumb is never, ever, ever, ever provide alcohol to minors if you're having a social gathering and you're a social host. there are some. It's a complicated area of the law,
right.
But that's the general premise to make sure that you protect yourself by not providing alcohol to minors. One question that always comes up too, David, that I'll just address is: do you have to sell alcohol to someone in order to be on the hook for that person's conduct? And the answer is no. You can provide them alcohol. And that happens a lot where someone is given a shot, someone is provided free alcohol, or a third party provides it to an individual. But generally, you can be on the hook both for alcohol that you're providing and alcohol you're selling. 3
minutes remaining,
Yep.
But I want to get to this real quick. So kind of coming full circle, if you've been injured in an accident and you believe the person causing the accident, the other driver, was intoxicated, what do you advise people to do?
So, look, there are some really good dram shop lawyers in our state. I think we've got a really good practice group of that. I'd highly recommend they get to someone. They don't have to come to us, and we say this all the time. Mm-hmm. We're providing a service so people understand, from a directional perspective, what they need to do. They need to get to an attorney because witness information, the chronology of what happened, receipts from bars, restaurants, establishments, convenience stores, all those things are critically important to be able to protect yourself. In addition to that, you need someone to lead, guide, and direct you through the criminal process, because a lot of times what happens is there's a corresponding criminal case going on with the civil case, and those things work together in such a way that the criminal result can have a major impact on the civil result. And working with the DA and the victim's family is critically important. So what I'd recommend is you want to get someone involved quickly and fast that does this type of work to make sure that you are protected, or the loved one that you have or the friend that you have that was injured at no fault of their own is protected in those circumstances. And so, get a law firm involved. It doesn't cost you any money to get a law firm involved and do an investigation. These cases are handled on a contingency fee, which we talk about all the time on the show. Get a lawyer involved quickly.
About a minute and a half remaining, but want to give you the opportunity to kind of a final thought for our viewers. No one is as qualified as you to kind of speak to them about this, but if you would just kind of look into the camera and your final thought on this subject matter.
What I would say, David, is really this. I have been lecturing on this issue. I have lobbied the legislature. I've lobbied the ABC board. I've done presentations to the ABC board for many, many years. I really believe that alcohol-related injuries are a bad thing in society. I believe in this litigation, and it's why I've committed a lot of my time to it. The reality is it's getting better, and it's getting better because people are more responsible in the way they manage themselves when they've been consuming alcohol, but there are still bad actors out there.
Right.
And we're here not for the folks doing it the right way.
Yeah.
We're here for the bad actors out there that aren't doing it the right way. So if you've been injured in an accident or involved in something that you think where alcohol was related, I would highly recommend you look us up or look someone else up that does this type of work to be able to lead, guide, and direct you through that unfortunate process.
Good stuff as always, sir.
Thank you. Good
Appreciate the time.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Josh, for being with us, and we appreciate you being with us as well. Thanks so much. We'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.